Far from Earth, in the cold quiet of deep space, there was a place called Outpost Corvine. It was not a planet. It was not a moon. It was a massive relay station built by the Starward Assembly many generations ago, watching over a peaceful stretch of space, far from any war, far from any real danger. For centuries, nothing unusual had ever happened here, until today. Inside the station, the control room hummed with quiet routine. Soft blue light washed over the walls. Officers from a dozen different worlds sat at their consoles, watching their screens, some with 4 eyes, some with skin like polished green glass, some with long antennae curling from their skulls. They came from different planets, but they all served one purpose: the safety of the Starward Assembly. The Assembly was a coalition of powerful alien civilizations that together governed thousands of star systems. It had rules. It had order. It believed, with the quiet confidence of long habit, that it understood every meaningful corner of known space. It did not know everything. At the center of the control room stood Commander Vantic, a tall alien with slate-gray skin and calm amber eyes. He had commanded Outpost Corvine for over 30 years. He had seen pirates. He had seen small border skirmishes. He had seen strange creatures drift in from unmapped systems. Nothing frightened him anymore. Or so he believed. "Commander," a young officer's voice cracked with alarm. "You need to see this." Vantic turned slowly. "What is it, Kellen?" Ensign Kellen pointed at his screen. Long-range sensors just picked up something big. Vantic crossed the room and looked. At first he saw nothing but the familiar dark, empty, quiet, unremarkable. Then a small dot appeared. It grew again. "That can't be right," Vantic said. "Run the scan again." Kellen's hands moved fast across the controls. The numbers on the display shifted, and when they did, the room went silent. "Sir," Kellen's voice had dropped to barely a whisper, "the object is over 38 kilometers long." The room froze. 38 kilometers. No vessel in Assembly history had ever approached that size. The largest Assembly warship, the Radiant Lance, measured just under 6 kilometers, and even that was considered a giant among the stars. "That has to be an error," said Lieutenant Ussa, a female officer with soft, violet skin whose voice usually stayed perfectly level. It wavered now. "No sensor array can detect something that large. It has to be a malfunction." Vantic wanted to believe her. He wanted this to be nothing more than a broken instrument. But 30 years of instinct told him otherwise. "Check it again," he ordered. "Full deep scan array." The room fell quiet except for the soft beeping of instruments. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then Kellen spoke again, his voice cracking. "Sir, deep scan confirms it. The object is real. It isn't a malfunction." Vantic's amber eyes narrowed. "Distance?" "Closing fast, sir. It'll reach the outer edge of the system in under 10 minutes. Vantic's hands slowly curled into fists. 10 minutes. Not nearly enough time to prepare for something they did not understand. "Get me a visual," he said. "I want to see it myself." The main screen flickered as it struggled to process the incoming feed. The image breaking apart again and again, as though the cameras themselves could not comprehend what they were looking at. "Why can't we get a clear picture?" Vantic asked. I don't know, sir," Kellen said. "It's like the object is too large for the optics to focus correctly. Adjusting the lens array now." Slowly, painfully slowly, the image resolved. And when it did, gasps rippled through the room. The shape on the screen looked less like a vessel and more like a mountain set adrift in the dark. Its surface was etched with strange metal patterns, deep channels of light glowing faintly like scattered stars. Massive weapon housings lined its flanks, each one larger than most assembly cruisers combined. And at the very front of the object, a symbol none of them recognized, a pale circle, and within it, a shape like a bird with wings spread wide. What is that?" Usa whispered. Nobody answered, nobody knew. Vantik felt something he had not felt in a long time, real fear, not the fear of a border skirmish or a pirate raid. This was something else entirely, the particular fear of standing in front of something you simply could not understand. "Options," he said, forcing his voice to stay level. "Give me options now." An older officer stepped forward, Bellic, gray-haired, deeply lined, a veteran of decades. "Commander, our weapons are useless against something that size. If it decides to attack, this station is gone in seconds." "Then we run," Kellen said quickly. "Running won't help," Bellic replied. "If it moves anywhere near the speed our sensors suggest, it will catch anything we send out." Silence settled over the room again, heavy and tense. Every eye turned to Vantik, waiting. "Contact Assembly Command," he said finally. "Tell them exactly what we're seeing. Tell them we may be facing something beyond anything we've dealt with before." "Yes, sir." Kellen's hands flew over the console. While the message transmitted, everyone kept their eyes fixed on the screen. The massive object drifted closer, slow and steady, utterly unhurried, moving like something that already knew without a shred of doubt that nothing in this part of space could stop it. "Sir," Kellen said suddenly, "we're receiving something, an audio signal coming from the object itself." Vantik's hearts, both of them, as his species had too, skipped. "Play it." The room went completely still. Static crackled first, the sound of a signal that had traveled a very long distance. Then, slowly, a voice came through. Calm, clear, speaking in a language the translator recognized instantly, a language belonging to a species the assembly had rarely bothered to study closely. "Humans. This is Colossus-class vessel Solstice, registered under the Terran Accord. We are entering this system under peaceful transit protocol. Do not be alarmed." Silence, no one in the room moved, no one breathed. "Did that just say human?" Usa asked, barely audible. Vantik's mind raced. Humans. The assembly knew of humans, of course. Earth had held minor trade agreements for years. They were considered a young species, still growing, still far behind the assembly's older powers. They had settled only a handful of worlds. Their technology, while steadily improving, had never once been treated as a serious concern. Until now. "That's impossible," Bellic said, shaking his head. "Humans don't build ships like that. Their largest known warship is barely 1/2 kilometer. We've studied their fleets. We've read their technology reports." "Then explain what's on our screen," Vantik said sharply. No one had an answer. The enormous vessel continued its slow approach, entirely unhurried, entirely calm, as though its crew already knew exactly how the assembly would react and simply did not care. "Sir, another message," Kellen said. "Play it." The same steady voice returned. "We understand this may cause concern. We wish to speak with assembly representatives regarding a matter of shared interest. We are not here for conflict." Vantik's fists tightened again. "A matter of shared interest," he repeated quietly. "What could a ship like that possibly want from us?" No one had an answer for that either. Usa turned to him, her eyes wide. "Commander, should we respond?" Vantik thought for a long moment. Every choice felt dangerous. Ignore the message, and the vessel might read silence as hostility. Respond wrong, and they might trigger something far worse. But doing nothing felt like the most dangerous option of all. "Open a channel," he said finally. "Careful, polite, no threats." Kellen's hands moved fast. "Channel open, sir." Vantik straightened, trying to look steadier than he felt. "This is Commander Vantik of Outpost Corvine representing the Starward Assembly. We acknowledge your presence. State your intentions clearly." A long pause followed, the kind that made everyone in the room hold their breath. Then the voice returned, calm and unshaken. "Commander Vantik, we mean no harm to your station or your people. We are here to deliver an important message to the Starward Assembly, a message regarding a threat that affects all of us, human and Assembly alike." Vantik blinked. "A threat? What threat?" "That information will be shared once proper contact with Assembly leadership has been established. For now, we ask for safe passage through this system." Vantik looked around the room. Every officer stared back at him, waiting, hoping he had the right answer. He did not. "Sir," Bellick whispered, leaning close, "we cannot make this decision alone. We need Assembly authorization before we allow something like this through our system." Vantik nodded slowly and turned back to the microphone. "Your request has been noted. We require confirmation from Assembly Command before granting passage. Please hold at a safe distance until further instruction." Another pause. "Understood, Commander. We will wait. But we ask that you not delay long. Time may be more valuable than you realize." The channel went quiet. Vantik let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Status on that message to Assembly Command." Sent, waiting on a response. The room stayed tense, filled with nervous energy. Nobody spoke unless they had to. All eyes kept drifting back to the massive shape on the screen, patient, unmoving, waiting like a giant that had never once had reason to fear anything. Minutes passed, it felt like hours. Finally, the communication display lit up. Vantik opened the message quickly, his eyes scanning the words, his expression shifting as he read. "Sir," Ussa asked carefully, "what does it say?" Vantik looked up, his face unreadable. "Assembly Command is sending a diplomatic team immediately. They want direct contact with the human vessel. They are very concerned." "Concerned how?" Bellick asked. Vantik hesitated. "They said this isn't the first sighting. Reports have come in from 3 other systems over the past week. Different locations, same massive size, same human markings." The room went cold with silence. "3 other ships," Ussa said, her voice shaking. "That size." Vantik nodded slowly. "It seems humanity has been building something far larger than anyone expected, and now they're revealing it all at once." Kellen swallowed hard. But why now? Why show the entire galaxy at the same time? Nobody had an answer. Vantik looked back at the screen, at the giant shape floating peacefully in the dark. Somewhere inside that vessel, human beings waited, calm and unafraid, entirely untroubled by the powerful assembly that governed the stars. For the first time in his long career, Commander Vantik felt something shift deep inside him, the sense that things were about to change. Not just for his station, not just for the assembly, for the entire galaxy. "Get every sensor we have locked onto that ship," Vantik ordered, his voice firm despite the fear hiding underneath it. "I want to know everything about it before that diplomatic team arrives. Every weapon, every engine, every possible weakness." "Yes, sir," Kellen said, already following the order. As the officers scrambled to gather data, Vantik stood still, staring at the screen at the massive human vessel called Solstice. He thought of all the years the Assembly had spent believing humans were weak, believing they posed no threat, believing they understood everything worth understanding about the galaxy around them. Now, staring at this impossible ship, Vantik understood something important. They understood nothing at all. And somewhere aboard that giant human warship, the crew waited patiently, watching the small, frightened station ahead of them. They had known this moment would come. They had prepared for it, and they were not afraid because they knew something the Assembly did not. This was only the beginning. 2 hours had passed since the human vessel first appeared near Outpost Corvine. The massive ship still floated quietly in the darkness, waiting, patient, unmoving. Every officer on the station had spent those 2 hours running scans, checking data, trying to understand something that felt impossible to understand. Commander Vantik had not left the control room once. His eyes were tired, but his mind stayed sharp. He kept watching the giant shape on the screen, waiting for something to change, waiting for the fear inside him to fade. It never did. "Sir," Kellen said, approaching, "the Assembly diplomatic team has arrived. Their shuttle is docking now." Vantik nodded. "Good. Bring them to the control room immediately." A few minutes later, the doors slid open. 3 figures entered, dressed in formal assembly robes, each representing a different member species. At the front stood a tall, slender alien with pale silver skin and deep black eyes, Ambassador Solve, one of the Assembly's most respected diplomats, a woman who had spent decades negotiating peace between rival star systems. If anyone could navigate a situation like this, it was her. "Commander Vantik," Solve said, her voice smooth and controlled. "Report the situation, please." Vantik straightened. "Ambassador, the vessel identifies itself as the Solstice, a Colossus-class warship belonging to the Terran Accord. It requested safe passage through our system and stated it wishes to deliver an important message to the Assembly." Solve's eyes moved to the main screen, studying the enormous shape floating in space. Her composed expression cracked just slightly. "That is larger than anything in our records." "Yes, Ambassador," Vantik replied. 38 kilometers in length. Our scans found no weakness in its hull. Its weapon systems appear far beyond anything the Assembly currently possesses." Solve took a slow breath, steadying herself. "And you said there are others, other ships like this one." "Correct. Reports from 3 other systems describe the exact same type of vessel. All appeared within the last week." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the weight of it. 4 Colossus-class ships, all appearing at once, all belonging to a species the Assembly had long dismissed as young and unimportant. "This changes everything," muttered one of the other diplomats, Delegate Harrow, an alien with rough, mottled green skin. "If humans have built 4 ships this powerful, how many more do they have hidden away?" "We don't know," Vantik admitted. "That's exactly what worries me." Solve turned to him. "Open communication with the vessel. I will speak with them directly." Vantik signaled Kell. "Land to open the channel." A moment later, the same calm human voice returned through the speakers. "This is the Solstice. We read you, Outpost Corvine." Solve stepped forward, her voice steady and diplomatic. "This is Ambassador Solve of the Starward Assembly. We have received your request for contact. Please identify yourself and state your full purpose here." A brief pause. Then a new voice spoke deeper, calmer, carrying a quiet, unshakable confidence. "Ambassador Solve, my name is Captain Ethan Marsh, commanding officer of the Solstice. Thank you for agreeing to speak with us." Every officer in the room stiffened at the sound of it. Nothing about it was aggressive. Nothing about it was threatening. But there was something in the calm certainty of it that sent a strange chill through the room. "Captain Marsh," Solvay said carefully, "your vessel is unlike anything we have seen from Earth before. Can you explain why such a powerful ship has suddenly appeared in assembly space?" Another pause. Then Marsh answered, "Ambassador, humanity built these ships because we discovered something that threatens every civilization in this galaxy, including the Assembly. We did not build them to threaten anyone. We built them because we had no other choice." Solvay's eyes narrowed slightly. "What threat are you referring to?" "We would prefer to explain that in person, Ambassador, face to face. This isn't something easily discussed over a channel." Solvay glanced at Vantik, then at the other diplomats. Their expressions all carried the same uncertainty. "Very well," Solvay said finally. "We will allow a small delegation to board your vessel, but we must insist on certain precautions." "Of course, we understand your caution. Send your delegation whenever you're ready. We'll guarantee their safety." The channel closed. Harrow stepped closer to Solvay, his voice low. "Ambassador, are you certain this is wise? We know almost nothing about this ship or its true intentions." "I'm aware of the risk," Solvay said. "But if we refuse to speak with them, we may never learn the truth about what's happening. And if there truly is a threat to the galaxy, ignoring it could prove far more dangerous than boarding their ship." Vantik stepped forward. "Ambassador, I'd like to accompany the delegation. If something happens, I want to be there." Solvay studied him a moment, then nodded. "Very well, Commander. Prepare a shuttle. We leave within the hour." The shuttle ride toward the solstice felt like the longest journey of Vantik's life. As they drew closer, the massive human warship filled the entire window, its metal surface stretching endlessly in every direction, etched with strange patterns of light that seemed to hum with quiet power. "It's like flying toward a moon," Harrow whispered, eyes wide. Nobody answered. Nobody could find the words. As the shuttle approached a massive docking bay, doors slid open, revealing bright light beyond. The shuttle glided in slowly, guided by unseen forces, and settled gently onto a wide platform. When the doors opened, the delegation stepped out carefully, eyes scanning the enormous space around them, a docking bay larger than most assembly star bases. Human soldiers stood in neat lines nearby, dressed in dark armor, faces calm and disciplined. They did not raise weapons. They did not posture. They simply stood, watching, waiting. At the far end of the bay, a man walked forward tall, with short dark hair and sharp gray eyes, wearing a simple gray uniform marked only with a small emblem. The same pale winged circle Vantik had seen etched on the ship's hull. "Ambassador Solvay," the man said, extending a hand. "I'm Captain Ethan Marsh. Thank you for coming." Solvay looked at his hand a moment, unfamiliar with the gesture, then carefully mirrored it. "Captain Marsh, this is an impressive vessel." Marsh offered a small, polite smile. "Please follow me. There's a great deal to discuss." They walked through wide metal corridors, softly lit, humming faintly with the sound of the ship's massive engines. Vantik studied everything around him, the technology, the design, the sheer scale of it. None of it matched anything the Assembly believed humans capable of. They arrived at a large chamber with a round table at its center, its walls lined with screens showing star charts and data readouts. Marsh gestured for everyone to sit. "Let's begin," Solvay said, trying to hide the tension in her voice. "Captain Marsh, you mentioned a threat to the galaxy. Please explain." Marsh nodded slowly, his expression turning serious. Roughly 3 years ago, one of our deep space survey ships discovered something unusual at the edge of known space, a signal unlike anything we detected before. He tapped a control, and one of the wall screens changed, showing a dark, twisted shape adrift in empty space. This is what we found, an ancient structure far older than any currently known civil is. Our scientists believe it belonged to a species that vanished thousands of years ago. Solvay leaned forward. Vanished how? Marsh's expression darkened. We don't know for certain, but the data we recovered suggests they were destroyed by something that may still be out there. The room went silent. What kind of something? Harrow asked, nervous. We call it the Hollow, Marsh said quietly. A weapon, or perhaps a living force, capable of consuming entire star systems. The data shows it has done this before, many times, across different parts of the galaxy. Vantik felt a cold shiver run through him. And you believe this hollow still exists? We do, Marsh said. Our scientists have tracked strange energy patterns moving slowly through unexplored space. The pattern matches historical records of ancient destruction. Based on its current trajectory, it will reach inhabited space within the next few decades. Solvay's silver skin seemed to pale slightly. Why has the Assembly never detected this? Because it's been asleep, Marsh answered. Or hidden, we're not entirely sure, but our scientists believe it's beginning to wake. The room fell into stunned silence. This is why we built the Colossus-class ships, Marsh continued. Not to threaten anyone, not to start a war, but to prepare for a fight we believe is coming, whether we're ready or not. Harrow shook his head. Why didn't humanity share this information sooner? Why build these ships in secret? Marsh's eyes hardened slightly. Because the last time humanity shared sensitive information with an outside power, it was used against us. We needed to be strong before revealing what we found. We needed proof, and we needed the ability to defend ourselves if the Assembly reacted with fear instead of cooperation. Solvay absorbed his words carefully. And now you're ready to share that proof. Yes, Marsh said. That's why we came not just to your station, but to 3 other systems as well. We're reaching out to different parts of the Assembly at the same time, hoping enough of you will listen before it's too late. Vantik studied the human captain closely, looking for any sign of deception, any hint of a hidden agenda. All he saw was quiet determination, the look of someone who had already faced something terrifying and was preparing to face it again. What do you need from us? Solvay finally asked. Marsh took a deep breath. Cooperation, resources, and most importantly, unity. If the Hollow wakes fully and begins moving toward inhabited space, no single civilization will be able to stop it alone, not even with ships as powerful as this one. The weight of his words settled heavily over the room. Solvay closed her eyes briefly, gathering her thoughts. This is a great deal to consider, Captain Marsh. The Assembly will need time to verify your claims, to study your data, and to discuss this among all our member worlds. I understand, Marsh said, but please don't take too long. Every day we delay is a day closer to a threat none of us are ready for. As the meeting continued, Vantik found his mind racing. Everything he had believed about humanity, about their place in the galaxy, was being challenged. They were not weak. They were not simple. They had been quietly preparing for a battle far greater than anyone had imagined. And now that battle was coming for everyone. Later, as the delegation walked back through the ship toward their shuttle, Vantik found himself beside Captain Marsh. Can I ask you something, Captain? Vantik said quietly. Marsh glanced over. Of course. Are you afraid of this hollow? Marsh was silent a long moment, staring down the long metal corridor. Finally, he spoke. Every single day, Commander, but fear isn't the problem. The problem is what we do with that fear. We chose to build, to prepare, to stand ready instead of hiding. Fear only becomes dangerous when it stops you from acting. Vantik thought about those words carefully. He thought about his own fear, the fear that had gripped him the moment the solstice appeared on his scanners. He thought about how close that fear had come to blinding him to the truth standing right in front of him. Thank you, Captain, Vantik said, for being honest with us. Marsh gave a small nod. Thank you for listening, Commander. Not everyone will. I hope enough of you do. As the delegation boarded their shuttle, Vantik looked back one last time at the massive human warship floating silently in space. He thought about the Assembly's fear, its pride, its belief that it understood the galaxy better than anyone else. He wondered how many other Assembly stations, right now, were reacting to their own Colossus-class visitors. He wondered how many would listen, and how many would let fear make the choice for them. Because somewhere out in the darkness, something ancient was waking up, and whether the Assembly was ready or not, the fight or the galaxy's survival had already begun. The Assembly's Grand Council chamber stood on Aurelia Prime, a vast world at the heart of Assembly space. It was here, inside a great hall of pale shining stone, that the most consequential decisions in the galaxy were made. Hundreds of representatives from 100 worlds gathered in tall, circular tiers around a central platform. Ambassador Solvay stood on that platform now, her silver skin catching the light pouring through the tall windows above. Behind her, a massive screen displayed the data gathered from the solstice, images of the ancient structure, energy readings, star charts tracing the slow, patient movement of something the humans called the Hollow. The chamber murmured with tense whispers as the representatives studied the information. Solvay raised a hand, and the room gradually fell quiet. Honored members of the Assembly, she began, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to say. 3 days ago, a human vessel of unprecedented size arrived near Outpost Corvine. Similar vessels appeared at 3 other locations across Assembly space in the same window. Their captains carry a warning about an ancient threat that may soon endanger every one of us. She gestured to the screen behind her. This is the evidence provided by Captain Ethan Marsh of the Terran Accord. According to human scientists, an ancient force known as the Hollow is slowly awakening in unexplored space. If their data is accurate, this threat could destroy entire star systems, just as it apparently destroyed a civilization thousands of years ago. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some representatives leaned forward, interested. Others crossed their arms, plainly skeptical. A representative from the outer cluster stood first, a large, broad-shouldered alien with thick gray skin and small, dark eyes. Grand Elder Kroth, one of the oldest and most respected voices on the Assembly. Ambassador Solvay, Kroth said, his deep voice rolling through the chamber. You ask us to believe a story of an ancient monster told to us by a species we barely trust, who suddenly reveals warships large enough to threaten half our fleet. Does that not strike you as convenient? Solvay kept her expression steady. I understand your doubt, Elder Kroth. I shared the same concern when I first heard this. But the data provided is extensive, and it matches historical anomalies recorded by our own deep space observatories over the past several decades. Or, Kroth said sharply, it is an elaborate excuse to justify building ships powerful enough to threaten the entire Assembly. Whispers of agreement rippled through part of the chamber. Another representative rose, a smaller, more cautious ambassador from the outer systems named Nessa. Elder Croth raises a fair point, but let us not dismiss this too quickly. If there is even a small chance this threat is real, ignoring it could cost us everything. And if it isn't real, Croth countered, we will have allowed humanity to gain influence and trust across the entire galaxy, based on nothing but fear and a clever story. The chamber erupted into overlapping voices, some siding with Croth, others with Nessa. Solve raised her hands again, trying to regain control of the room. Please, she said firmly, arguing will not solve this. We need facts, not assumptions. A quiet voice spoke from the back of the chamber. May I address the assembly? All eyes turned toward a smaller figure stepping forward, Dr. Oren Thess, a member of the Assembly's scientific division, thin, pale, blue-skinned, with the tired eyes of someone who had spent many sleepless nights buried in research. Speak, Doctor, Solve said, gesturing him forward. Thess stepped onto the platform, holding a small data device. For the past 2 days, my team has independently reviewed the data provided by the human delegation. We compared their findings against older assembly records, some dating back centuries. He tapped his device, and new images appeared on the screen, old star charts, ancient reports, faded records from long-forgotten expeditions. These are reports from assembly explorers who ventured into the same region of space the humans describe, Thess explained. Several of these expeditions vanished without explanation. Others reported strange energy readings similar to what the humans have shown us. The chamber grew quiet, listening. Now consult our own historical archives, Thess continued. There are records of an ancient civilization known as the Kalan, believed to have existed nearly 10,000 years ago. Their entire species disappeared suddenly with no clear cause. Some scholars believed it was war, others believed it was disease. But new evidence suggests, he paused, letting the weight settle, that they may have been destroyed by the very thing the humans are warning us about. Silence fell over the chamber like a he. Croth's expression hardened, but even he seemed to hesitate. You are saying our own history supports this claim, he said. I am saying, Thess replied carefully, that we cannot afford to dismiss it without deeper investigation. The evidence, both human and assembly, points toward something real, something dangerous. Solve stepped forward again. This is exactly why I brought this matter before the assembly. We must decide together how to respond. Croth remained silent a long moment, his old eyes studying the screen. Finally, he spoke again, quieter than before. Even if this threat is real, that does not mean we should simply trust humanity. They kept this secret for years. They built weapons capable of overwhelming us without a single word of warning. They kept it secret, Nessa said gently, because they feared exactly this reaction. Fear, suspicion, division. Perhaps if we respond with hostility now, we only prove their fears were justified. Croth did not answer immediately, clearly torn between suspicion and the growing weight of evidence before him. Another representative rose, a sharp-eyed alien named Ambassador Vale from the outer colonies, whose people had long championed maintaining assembly dominance over younger species. Regardless of whether this threat is real, Vale said coldly, humanity's actions cannot go unpunished. They built ships far beyond the technological limits imposed on newer species. This violates no fewer than 3 assembly treaties. Murmurs of agreement rose from part of the chamber. Solve's eyes narrowed slightly. Ambassador Vale, if this threat is real, Punishing humanity for preparing to defend the galaxy seems short-sighted, to say the least. Vale crossed his arms. Rules exist for a reason, Ambassador. If we allow this violation to pass without consequence, what message does that send to other species? That secrecy and deception are acceptable, so long as the excuse is convincing enough. The chamber buzzed again with argument and counter-argument. Solveig felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The assembly was fracturing before her eyes, torn between fear, suspicion, tradition, and the terrifying possibility that an ancient threat was truly approaching. Dr. Thess spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "Honored members, may I suggest a path forward? Instead of arguing from assumption, allow a joint scientific team, human and assembly members together, to investigate the region in question. If the threat is confirmed, we act together. If it is not, we address humanity's technological violations separately." Solveig looked to Croth, then to Vale, watching their expressions carefully. Croth finally nodded slowly. "That seems reasonable, a cautious first step." Vale, still visibly displeased, gave a reluctant nod as well. "I will not object to further investigation, but humanity's actions will still need to be addressed." Solveig allowed herself a small breath of relief. "Then it is decided. A joint investigation team will be formed immediately. Commander Vantik, given his direct experience with the human delegation, will assist in coordinating this effort." From near the back of the chamber, Vantik straightened, surprised to hear his own name. He stepped forward slightly, giving a respectful nod. "I am honored to assist, Ambassador." As the meeting moved toward planning the investigation, a quiet unease still lingered in the room. Even with an agreement reached, the divide between trust and suspicion remained clear. Some representatives whispered among themselves, still visibly doubtful of humanity's true intentions. Others sat in thoughtful silence, wrestling with the terrifying possibility that an ancient monster might soon threaten everything they knew. Later that day, Vantik walked the quiet halls of the council chamber building, his mind heavy with thought. He found Solveig standing near a large window, looking out over the vast city stretching below. "Ambassador," he said, approaching. Solveig turned slightly. "Commander Vantik, I hope you don't mind the responsibility I've placed on you." "Not at all," Vantik replied. "Though I admit I didn't expect to find myself in the middle of something quite this significant." Solveig gave a tired smile. "None of us did. A week ago, our biggest concern was a minor trade dispute in the outer colonies. Now we're discussing an ancient threat capable of ending civilizations." Vantik nodded slowly. "Do you believe Marsh was telling the truth?" Solveig was quiet a moment before answering. "I believe he was telling the truth as he understands it. Whether that truth is entirely accurate, only time and investigation will tell." "And if it is true," Vantik asked, "if this hollow really is coming?" Solveig's eyes hardened slightly. "Then the divisions we saw today in that chamber will need to disappear, and quickly. No single species, no matter how advanced, will survive something. Like this alone." Vantik looked out the window as well, at the peaceful city below, filled with beings from 100 worlds living out their ordinary lives, unaware of the storm quietly gathering on the horizon. "There's something else troubling me," Vantik said quietly. "What is it?" Ambassador Vale. His reaction seemed different from the others, less about fear, more about control. Solveig's expression grew serious. "I noticed that as well. Vale has never fully trusted younger species gaining too much power. If this threat proves real, I worry his focus will remain on limiting humanity's influence rather than uniting against a common enemy. Vantik frowned. That could be dangerous. Very dangerous, Solve agreed. Politics have a way of becoming just as deadly as any monster, Commander, sometimes more so. They stood in silence a while longer, both lost in thought, both aware that the coming days would test the Assembly in ways it had never been tested before. Meanwhile, far away aboard the Solstice, Captain Marsh stood alone in his private quarters, staring at a star map glowing softly on the wall. The strange ancient structure blinked steadily on the display, a small, terrifying reminder of what awaited them all. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. His first officer's voice came through the comm. "Captain, we've received word from the Assembly. They've agreed to a joint investigation." Marsh let out a slow breath, some of the tension easing from his shoulders. "Good, that's a start." "You don't sound relieved, sir." Marsh turned away from the star map, his expression thoughtful. "A start isn't the same as unity, Lieutenant. Politics moves slowly, even when the danger doesn't wait." "Do you think they'll come together in time?" Marsh was silent a long moment before answering. "I hope so, because if they don't, humanity may end up fighting this battle alone, just like we always feared we would." He looked back at the glowing map, at the small dark shape representing the ancient threat, slowly stirring somewhere in the depths of unexplored space. "And alone," he murmured quietly, "even a ship as powerful as this one might not be enough." 3 years earlier, deep in an unexplored region of space, a small Terran Accord survey vessel named the Wayfinder drifted quietly through the dark. Its mission was simple: study a strange gravitational anomaly detected by long-range telescopes months prior. Nobody aboard expected to find anything more than unusual debris. They were wronged. Dr. Naomi Chandra, lead scientist aboard the Wayfinder, sat at the observation deck, watching sensor readings scroll across her screen. Beside her, Captain Ethan Marsh, still a young officer at the time, studied the same data with growing confusion. "These readings don't make sense," Chandra muttered, adjusting her instruments. "The gravitational pull is inconsistent. It's like something out there is breathing." Marsh frowned, breathing. "Expanding and contracting slowly over long periods," Chandra explained. "Nothing natural behaves this way." As the Wayfinder drew closer, the crew began picking up something unexpected on their scanners. A massive structure, ancient and half-buried beneath layers of frozen debris. Twisted metal spires stretched outward like broken fingers, covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly with a dim, pulsing light. "Captain," the ship's pilot called nervously, "should we approach?" Marsh stared at the structure a long moment. Every instinct told him to turn back, report the find, and let a larger, better-equipped fleet investigate. But curiosity, and a strange pull he couldn't quite explain, kept him silent a moment too long. "Take us closer," he finally said. The ship drifted nearer, its lights illuminating the ancient structure piece by piece. As they scanned deeper, they found the remains of an advanced civilization, long dead, their technology far beyond anything humanity had achieved. And within the structure's core, they found a recording device, miraculously still functioning after thousands of years. When Chandra managed to extract and translate a fragment of its data, the crew gathered around a small screen in stunned silence, watching flickering images of a thriving civilization suddenly consumed by darkness. Cities collapsing, skies turning black, and through it all, a massive shadow moving across entire planets, devouring everything in its path. The recording ended with a single phrase, translated roughly into human language. "It comes for all who grow too loud." Nobody spoke for a long time after that. Back on Earth, the discovery sent shockwaves through the highest levels of the Terran Accord government. A secret council formed, made up of Earth's top scientists, military leaders, and political figures. Their mission: determine whether the threat was real, and if so, prepare humanity to survive it. Admiral Rene Castillo, one of Earth's most respected military leaders, stood before this secret council in a heavily guarded underground facility. Behind her, screens displayed the same haunting recording found aboard the ancient structure. "If this is real," Castillo said firmly, "we're looking at an extinction-level threat, not from another empire, not from another war, from something ancient, something we barely understand." A political leader across the table frowned deeply. "And you want us to build warships, massive ones, in complete secrecy?" "Yes," Castillo replied without hesitation. "If the Assembly discovers this too soon, without proof, they may panic. They may see our preparation as an act of aggression rather than survival. We need time to build, to prepare, before revealing anything." "And if the Assembly views this secrecy as betrayal instead?" another leader asked. Castillo's expression hardened. "Then we deal with that consequence when it comes. Right now, our priority is survival, not politics." After hours of intense debate, the council reluctantly agreed. Thus began Project Solstice, humanity's most ambitious and secretive engineering effort in history. Building the Colossus-class warships was not easy. It required years of sacrifice, innovation, and quiet desperation. Entire industries were secretly redirected. Thousands of scientists, engineers, and workers were brought into isolated facilities, sworn to secrecy under the highest security protocols the Terran Accord had ever established. Dr. Chandra, now leading the ship's core technology division, worked tirelessly alongside her team to develop new forms of energy shielding, weapon systems, and propulsion technology far beyond anything currently used by the Assembly. "We need something stronger," Chandra said one late night, staring at failed test results on her screen. Around her, exhausted engineers rubbed their eyes, having worked nearly 20 hours straight. "We've already pushed past every known limit," one of her assistants said wearily. "The reactor core keeps overheating past safety margins." Chandra stared at the data, thinking hard. "Then we build a new kind of core, one that doesn't just contain the energy, one that works with it." It took another 6 months of failed experiments, dangerous tests, and countless sleepless nights before they finally succeeded. The result was a new reactor system capable of powering weapons and shields strong enough to withstand even a direct hit from the Assembly's most advanced warships. Meanwhile, Marsh, now placed in charge of overseeing the military side of the project, worked closely with soldiers and pilots being secretly trained for a war they hoped would never come. "You all know why you're here," Marsh said one morning, standing before a group of newly selected crew members inside a massive hidden shipyard. Behind him, the early framework of the first Colossus-class vessel stretched endlessly into the darkness of the underground facility. "This ship and the others like it may be humanity's only chance at survival," Marsh continued. "We are not building this to start a war. We're building it because a war may already be coming, whether we're ready for it or not." The soldiers listened, their faces a mixture of fear and determination. "Some of you have family who don't know where you are right now," Marsh said. Some of you have made sacrifices no one outside this facility will ever fully understand. I promise you this. What we build here will protect not just Earth, but every planet that calls this galaxy home. The years that followed were filled with hardship. Entire families were separated as workers disappeared into secret facilities for months at a time. Funding drained resources from other parts of Earth's economy, causing quiet struggles among ordinary citizens who had no idea why life had suddenly grown harder. Admiral Castillo often visited these hidden facilities personally, checking on progress, offering support, carrying the immense weight of secrecy on her shoulders. "How much longer, Doctor?" Castillo asked Chandra one evening, watching workers assemble massive sections of the Solstice's outer hull. "At this pace, another year before the first ship is fully operational," Chandra answered, exhaustion clear in her voice. "Maybe less if we push harder." Castillo studied the massive structure before her, its scale almost unbelievable against anything humanity had built before. And the others? "The remaining 3 ships slower," Chandra admitted. "We're already stretching our resources dangerously thin." Castillo nodded slowly. "Then we push harder, we don't have the luxury of time." Chandra hesitated before speaking again. "Admiral, may I ask something?" "Of course." "Do you truly believe the Assembly will listen when the time comes? Or are we simply preparing to face this threat completely alone?" Castillo's expression grew distant, thoughtful. "I don't know, Doctor. Humanity has spent generations being treated as the youngest, weakest species among the stars. Trust like that isn't earned overnight." She paused, looking directly at Chandra. "But we cannot let fear of rejection stop us from trying. If this threat is as real as we believe, unity isn't just an option, it's a necessity." Finally, after nearly 3 years of relentless work, sacrifice, and secrecy, the first Colossus-class warship, the Solstice, was completed. Its massive engines roared to life for the first time inside the hidden shipyard, shaking the very ground beneath it. Captain Marsh stood on the ship's bridge, staring out at the vast darkness of space through the main viewport, feeling the immense weight of responsibility settle over him. "All systems operational, Captain," his first officer reported. Marsh took a deep breath. "Then it's time." As the Solstice prepared for its first mission, Marsh turned to his crew, many of whom had sacrificed years of their lives to reach this moment. "This is what we've worked for," he said quietly. "Not for glory, not for power, but because somewhere out there something ancient is waking up, and humanity refused to wait until it was too late to prepare." He looked around at his crew's determined faces, feeling a strange mixture of pride and fear. "Let's show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of," Marsh said. "Not as a threat, as a shield." With that, the Solstice left Earth's secret shipyard for the first time, beginning its long journey toward first contact, toward Outpost Corvine, toward the Starward Assembly, and toward a future none of them could yet fully predict. Back in the present, aboard the Solstice, Marsh sat quietly in his quarters, remembering those difficult years of secrecy and sacrifice. He thought about Chandra, about Admiral Castillo, about every soldier and engineer who had given everything to make this moment possible. He glanced again at the star map on his wall, the ancient threat still slowly stirring somewhere in the darkness. "We didn't build you out of pride," he whispered, as if speaking directly to the assembly, to the galaxy itself. "We built you out of necessity." He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of humanity's future settle heavily on his shoulders. "I just hope," he murmured, "that necessity is enough to convince them in time." Aboard the Solstice, life continued in a steady rhythm, even as the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. Captain Marsh walked the long corridors of his ship early one morning, greeting crew members as he passed. Some saluted, some simply nodded. All of them respected him, not because rank demanded it, but because he had earned it. Marsh was not a loud man. He rarely raised his voice, even in moments of crisis. But there was something about the calm way he carried himself that made people trust him instantly. Perhaps it was the steadiness in his eyes. Perhaps it was the way he listened carefully before speaking. Whatever it was, his crew followed him without hesitation, even into the unknown. He reached the ship's observation deck, a quiet room with a massive window overlooking the endless stars. This was where he often came to think, away from the noise of command, away from the pressure of politics. "Couldn't sleep again, Captain?" a familiar voice asked. Marsh turned to see Naomi Chandra standing near the doorway, now serving as the Solstice's chief science officer. Though years had passed since their first discovery aboard the Wayfinder, she still carried the same sharp curiosity in her eyes. "Something like that," Marsh admitted, offering a tired smile. Chandra walked over and stood beside him, both staring out at the vast darkness. "You've been carrying a lot of weight lately." "I carry the same weight I always have," Marsh replied. "It just feels heavier now that we're finally out here facing it." Chandra studied him carefully. "You know, none of this would have been possible without you. Your leadership held this entire project together, even during the hardest years." Marsh shook his head slightly. "It wasn't just me, it was everyone. You, Admiral Castillo, every engineer, every soldier who gave up years of their life to build this ship." "Still," Chandra said gently, "the crew looks to you for strength, especially now." Marsh was quiet a moment before answering. "Sometimes I wonder if I deserve that trust." Chandra raised an eyebrow. "Why would you say that?" Marsh hesitated, his eyes fixed on the stars outside. "Because every decision I make now doesn't just affect this ship. It affects the future of humanity itself. If I make the wrong choice, if I trust the wrong person or hesitate at the wrong moment, the consequences won't just fall on me." Chandra placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "That's exactly why you're the right person for this responsibility, Ethan, because you understand the weight of it. Someone who didn't care about the consequences would be far more dangerous." Marsh gave a small, tired smile. "Thank you, Naomi, I needed to hear that." Later that day, Marsh walked through the ship's training facility, where soldiers practiced combat drills under the watchful eye of Commander Silas Boone, the ship's chief of security. Boone was a broad-shouldered man with a stern face, but beneath his tough exterior was someone deeply loyal to his crew. "Captain," Boone said, noticing Marsh's arrival, "come to check on the troops." "Something like that," Marsh said, watching the soldiers move through their exercises. "How are they holding up?" "Nervous," Boone admitted honestly. "Most of them signed up expecting a quiet defensive posting near Earth. Instead, they find themselves at the center of first contact with an entire galactic assembly." Marsh nodded slowly. "Do you think they're ready?" Boone considered the question. "Ready for a fight? Maybe not yet. Ready to stand behind you? Absolutely." Marsh appreciated the honesty. It was one of the reasons he trusted Boone so deeply. As they spoke, a young soldier approached, clearly hesitant but determined, Corporal Lena Ruiz. "Captain Marsh, sir, may I ask you something?" "Of course, Corporal." Ruiz straightened nervously. "Do you really believe the assembly will help us after everything, after keeping this a secret for so long?" Marsh studied her a moment, recognizing the same fear and uncertainty shared by nearly everyone aboard the ship. He crouched slightly to meet her eye level, his voice calm and reassuring. "I believe most people, no matter where they come from, want to survive," Marsh said. "Fear can make trust difficult, but it doesn't make it impossible. We've taken the first step by reaching out. Now it's up to both sides to keep building that trust." Ruiz nodded slowly, seeming comforted. "Thank you, Captain." As she walked away, Boone glanced at Marsh with a small, knowing smile. "You always know exactly what to say to keep them calm." Marsh chuckled softly. "I just tell them the truth as best I understand it. That's all any of us can do." That evening, Marsh received an urgent message summoning him to the ship's command center. When he arrived, Chandra and Boone were already present, along with the ship's communications officer, Lieutenant Farah Odom. "What's happening?" Marsh asked. Odom turned to him, her expression tense. "Captain, we've intercepted encrypted assembly communications. It seems not everyone on the Council supports the joint investigation." Marsh's brow furrowed. "Explain." "There's a faction," Odom continued, "led by a representative named Ambassador Vale, pushing for immediate restrictions against humanity. Some council members are calling for our fleet to be disarmed before any further cooperation takes place." Boone crossed his arms, frustrated. "Disarmed, after everything we've shared with them." "It gets worse," Odom added. "There are rumors of a small extremist group within assembly military circles planning to act independently if the larger council refuses to take action against us." Marsh felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the same feeling he'd carried many times over the past 3 years, the constant balance between hope and fear. "Do we know how serious this threat is?" Marsh asked. "Not yet," Odom admitted. "But given the size and power of our ships, any conflict, even a small one, could escalate quickly into something far larger." Chandra spoke up, thoughtful. "This is exactly the situation Admiral Castillo feared. Trust takes time to build. Fear can destroy it in an instant." Marsh exhaled slowly, gathering his thoughts. "We can't control how the assembly reacts internally, but we can control how we respond. No aggressive posturing, no unnecessary displays of force. We keep showing them we came here for peace, not war." Boone frowned slightly. "And if that extremist group decides to attack us anyway?" Marsh's expression hardened, though his voice stayed calm. "Then we defend ourselves, carefully, only if absolutely necessary, but we do not fire first. Humanity's future depends on how we're remembered during this moment, not just as fighters, but as a species capable of restraint and trust." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the weight of his words. "Understood, Captain," Boone finally said, nodding respectfully. Later that night, alone in his quarters, Marsh once again stood before the star map, staring at the dark shape representing the ancient threat still lurking somewhere in unexplored space. He thought about Ruiz's question earlier that day, about whether the assembly would truly help them. He also thought about his own doubts, hidden carefully beneath his calm exterior. Leadership, he had learned, wasn't about eliminating fear. It was about carrying that fear quietly, so others could find strength through his example. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Chandra stepped inside, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you could use this," she said, handing him one. "Thank you," Marsh said, accepting gratefully. They stood together in comfortable silence a while, both staring at the star map. "Do you ever regret it?" Chandra asked quietly. All those years of secrecy, sacrifice, everything we gave up to build this ship. Marsh considered the question carefully. No, he finally said. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret doing what needed to be done. Chandra smiled softly. That's very much like you, Ethan, always finding the difference between necessity and desire. Marsh chuckled quietly. Someone has to keep this crew grounded, might as well be me. As they continued talking, a sudden alert flashed across Marsh's console. His expression shifted instantly from calm reflection to focused alertness. Captain, Odom's voice came urgently through the comm. We have a situation. Unidentified assembly vessels approaching our position at high speed. Weapons appear to be armed. Marsh set down his coffee immediately, his calm demeanor replaced by sharp focus. How many ships? 3, Captain. Small, fast attack vessels, not part of the official assembly fleet. Marsh's jaw tightened. The extremist faction Odom had warned him about earlier had made their move. All hands battle stations, Marsh ordered firmly, moving quickly toward the command center. But remember, no offensive action unless directly fired upon. As alarms began echoing through the ship, soldiers rushed to their positions, adrenaline mixing with fear and determination. Chandra hurried alongside Marsh, her earlier calm now replaced by focused urgency. Ethan, she said quietly as they walked, whatever happens, I trust your judgment. Marsh glanced at her briefly, offering a small, determined nod. Then let's prove that trust wasn't misplaced. Together, they stepped into the command center, ready to face humanity's first true test since revealing themselves to the galaxy. The fate of Earth, the Assembly, and possibly the entire galaxy now rested on the decisions Captain Marsh was about to make. The command center of the Solstice buzzed with controlled tension as officers moved quickly to their stations. Red emergency lighting bathed the room in a dim glow, matching the seriousness of the moment. Marsh stood at the center of it all, his eyes locked on the main tactical display, watching 3 small red dots approach his ship's position. Distance to unidentified vessels, Marsh asked calmly, though his mind raced beneath his composed exterior. 2,000 kilometers and closing fast, Captain, Odom reported from her station. Weapons remain armed, but they haven't opened fire yet. Boone stood nearby, arms crossed, watching the screen intently. Those aren't standard assembly military ships. Design matches independent militia vessels, likely funded privately. Marsh's jaw tightened. Vale's people. Most likely, Boone agreed. Chandra stood a few steps behind, her earlier calm replaced with quiet worry. Ethan, if they fire first, how do we respond without starting something far bigger? Marsh took a slow breath, steadying himself. We show them exactly what they're dealing with without giving them a reason to call it an attack. He turned to Odom. Open a channel to the approaching vessels. Channel open, Captain. Marsh straightened, his voice calm but firm as it echoed through the command center. Unidentified vessels, this is Captain Ethan Marsh of the Solstice. You are approaching a Terran Accord vessel currently under Assembly-sanctioned diplomatic protection. State your intentions immediately. Silence answered him at first. Then a rough, aggressive voice crackled through the speakers. Terran vessel, you have no right to Assembly protection. Your kind has broken sacred treaties. Stand down and prepare to be boarded or face the consequences. Boone clenched his fists. Boarded, they can't be serious. Marsh kept his expression steady, though his eyes narrowed slightly. We have not violated any treaty that justifies this action. Withdraw immediately, or we will be forced to defend ourselves." "Then defend yourselves," the voice snarled back, "if you can." The channel closed abruptly. "Captain," Odom said urgently, "the lead vessel just increased speed, weapons charging." Marsh's heart pounded, but his voice remained calm. "All defensive systems online, shields to maximum. Do not fire unless directly engaged." The crew moved quickly, following his orders with practiced precision. Despite the fear evident on some faces, there was also a quiet confidence born from years of preparation for exactly this kind of moment. "Captain," Boone said quietly, stepping closer, "if they fire, we have every right to respond with full force." Marsh shook his head firmly. "Full force isn't necessary, Silas, not yet. We show restraint first, controlled strength, not aggression." Before Boone could respond, the tactical display flashed a warning. "Captain, lead vessel firing." A streak of energy shot across space, striking the Solstice's massive shields. The entire ship shuddered slightly from the impact, though the damage was minimal. "Shields holding at 98%, Odom reported, relief clear in her voice. Marsh exhaled slowly. "As expected, their weapons aren't strong enough to threaten us seriously." "Then let's end this quickly," Boone urged. "One clean shot and they'll retreat." Marsh considered his options carefully. He understood the temptation, the desire to end the threat swiftly and decisively. But he also understood the delicate political situation resting on how humanity handled this exact moment. "No offensive weapons," Marsh finally said. "Instead, we demonstrate our capabilities without destroying them. Silas prepare a controlled defensive pulse, enough to disable their systems temporarily without causing serious harm." Boone hesitated a brief moment before nodding, trusting his captain's judgment despite his own instincts. "Understood, Captain. Preparing defensive pulse." The crew worked quickly, activating a specialized defensive system designed specifically for situations like this. A system built not to destroy, but to demonstrate strength while minimizing casualties. "Pulse ready, Captain," Boone reported. "Fire," Marsh ordered calmly. A wave of blue energy expanded outward from the Solstice, washing gently over the three attacking vessels. Instantly, their weapons and propulsion systems flickered and shut down, leaving them drifting helplessly in space. "Direct hit," Odom confirmed. "All three vessels disabled, no casualties detected." A tense silence filled the command center, followed by quiet relief among the crew. "Well done, everyone," Marsh said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through him. "Farah, reopen communications with the disabled vessels." "Channel open, Captain." Marsh spoke clearly, his tone calm but firm. "This was your only warning. Our intentions remain peaceful, but we will always be capable of defending ourselves. Return to your base and reconsider your actions carefully." There was no response from the disabled ships, only silence as they drifted quietly in space, their weapons and systems completely powerless. News of the attack spread quickly through assembly channels, causing immediate uproar within the council chamber back on Aurelia Prime. Ambassador Solvay stood before an emergency session, her expression grave. An unauthorized militia group attacked the human vessel Solstice without assembly approval, Solvay announced firmly. Despite being fired upon, Captain Marsh chose restraint, disabling the attacking ships without loss of life. Murmurs spread through the chamber, many representatives visibly shocked. Grand Elder Croth frowned deeply. This confirms my earlier concerns. Humanity possesses weapons capable of overwhelming force, yet chooses to demonstrate restraint. Why? Dr. Thess stepped forward. Perhaps because they understand exactly what we fear, Elder Croth, and perhaps they're trying to prove they aren't the threat we assumed them to be. Ambassador Vale, however, remained visibly displeased, his expression hard and unreadable. Or perhaps they're demonstrating exactly how easily they could defeat us if they chose to. Solvay turned sharply toward him. Ambassador Vale, need I remind you that this attack was carried out by a militia group linked closely to your own political allies? The chamber fell into uneasy silence, all eyes shifting toward Vale, who remained stiff and controlled despite the accusation. I have no official connection to this militia, Vale said carefully. Whatever actions they took were entirely their own. Croth studied Vale closely, clearly unconvinced, but chose not to press the issue further. At this moment, regardless of who is responsible, this incident must not happen again. If the human threat assessment proves accurate, unnecessary conflict among ourselves only weakens our chances of survival. Reluctantly, murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber, though tension remained thick in the air. Solvay took a deep breath, addressing the council once more. Given today's events, I propose immediate reinforcement of our joint investigation efforts. We cannot afford further delays caused by internal conflict. After a tense debate, the council reluctantly agreed, granting additional resources and urgency to the investigation into the ancient threat known as the Hollow. Back aboard the Solstice, Marsh sat quietly in his private quarters, reflecting on the day's events. Chandra entered softly, carrying 2 cups of tea this time instead of coffee. "You did the right thing today," she said gently, handing him a cup. Marsh accepted it gratefully, though his expression remained thoughtful. Restraint doesn't always feel like victory, Naomi. Even without casualties, we've shown the galaxy exactly how powerful we truly are. Would you have preferred hiding that power? Chandra asked softly. Marsh shook his head slowly. No, but strength always comes with consequences. Now more than ever, some in the assembly will fear us, regardless of our intentions. Chandra placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. Fear can be dangerous, yes, but so can hope. Today you gave people a reason to hope humanity isn't the threat some assumed we were. Marsh considered her words carefully, finding comfort in their truth. Let's hope that's enough. As they sat quietly together, staring out at the stars once again, neither could yet know how deeply today's events would shape the delicate balance between humanity and the assembly in the days ahead. Somewhere far away, in the depths of unexplored space, the ancient threat continued its slow awakening, indifferent to the political struggles and fragile trust forming among the galaxy's civilizations. Time, Marsh knew, was quickly running out. 2 weeks had passed since the attack on the Solstice. During that time, a joint investigation fleet made up of both human and assembly vessels traveled together toward the edge of known space, heading directly for the coordinates where the ancient structure had first been discovered. Commander Vantek stood on the bridge of the assembly science vessel Farthredder, watching the empty darkness stretch endlessly ahead. Beside him stood Dr. Thess, carefully reviewing data collected during the long journey. Nearby, through a secure communication link, Chandra and Marsh monitored the same information from the Solstice, traveling closely alongside the assembly ship. Approaching target coordinates, the Farthreader's pilot announced. Vantik straightened, his eyes fixed on the main viewport. Slowly, the ancient structure came into view, massive, twisted, and eerily silent, exactly as Marsh had described weeks earlier. "By the stars," Thess whispered, staring at the structure with a mixture of awe and fear. "It's real." On the communication screen, Marsh's expression remained calm, though his eyes carried the weight of memory. "I told you it wasn't a story, Doctor." Thess nodded slowly, still processing the sight before him. "Forgive my doubt, Captain. Seeing it directly is different from studying data alone." "Understandable," Marsh replied gently. "Let's proceed carefully. We don't yet know what effect our presence might have." Together, the two ships approached the ancient structure slowly, scanning every inch as they moved closer. Massive spires stretched outward like broken claws reaching toward the stars, covered in faint, pulsing symbols that glowed weakly in the darkness. "Life signs?" Vantik asked. "None detected," the ship's sensor officer reported. "But energy readings are unusual, similar to what we detected in our historical Kalan records." Chandra leaned closer to her screen, studying the readings carefully. "The pattern matches what we found 3 years ago, but stronger now. Whatever's inside that structure, it's more active than before." Marsh's expression tightened, "Which means it's waking up faster than we anticipated." A small joint team, made up of both human and assembly scientists, prepared to board the structure directly, hoping to gather more precise data. Vantik volunteered to lead the assembly portion of the team, while Chandra led the human scientists. As their shuttle approached the ancient structure, the massive spires loomed overhead, casting long shadows across the small vessel. The closer they got, the more the strange symbols seemed to pulse rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. "It's growing stronger," Chandra murmured, watching her instruments. "The energy signature has increased 12% since we first arrived." Vantik studied the structure through the shuttle's window, his usual calm slightly shaken. "How long until it fully awakens?" Chandra hesitated before answering. "Based on current growth patterns, perhaps a matter of weeks, possibly less." The team fell silent, absorbing the weight of that terrifying timeline. The shuttle docked carefully at an opening within the structure, and the team stepped out cautiously, their suits equipped with specialized scanning equipment. Inside, the corridors were dark, illuminated only by the faint glow of ancient symbols lining the walls. "Stay close," Vantik instructed, his voice echoing softly through the empty halls. "We don't know what to expect." As they moved deeper into the structure, strange whispers seemed to drift through the air, though sensors detected no actual sound waves. "Is anyone else hearing that?" Chandra asked quietly. Several team members nodded nervously, clearly unsettled by the strange sensation. "It might be some kind of psychic residue," Thess suggested, his voice trembling slightly. "Perhaps left behind by whatever destroyed the civilization T had built this place." They continued forward until they reached a massive central chamber, dominated by a giant crystal structure pulsing with dim red light. Ancient technology surrounded the crystal, clearly designed to monitor, or perhaps contain, whatever lay within. "This must be the core," Chandra said, carefully approaching the crystal with her scanning equipment. "The source of the energy readings we've been detecting." As she scanned the crystal, her instrument suddenly spiked violently, causing her to step back in alarm. "What is it?" Vantik asked immediately. Chandra's eyes widened as she studied the readings. This isn't just an energy source, it's a containment field. Whatever destroyed the Kalan civilization, it wasn't destroyed itself. It was trapped here inside this crystal. The team stood in stunned silence, absorbing the terrifying implication. Trapped, Thess repeated slowly, and now it's breaking free. Suddenly, the ancient symbols throughout the chamber flared brightly, pulsing rapidly in unison. The ground trembled slightly beneath their feet. "Everyone back to the shuttle. Now," Vantik ordered urgently. The team rushed back through the dark corridors, the pulsing lights growing brighter and more intense behind them. As they reached the shuttle and quickly launched away from the structure, they watched in horror as massive cracks began forming along its ancient surface, glowing with intense red energy. "Captain Marsh," Chandra said urgently through her comm, her voice shaking slightly. "We need to leave this area immediately. The containment field is failing." Aboard the Solstice, Marsh's expression turned grim as he processed the information. "Understood. All ships prepare for immediate withdrawal." As the joint fleet quickly retreated from the ancient structure, sensors continued monitoring the rapidly changing energy readings. Behind them, the structure pulsed violently, its ancient defenses failing rapidly under the pressure of whatever force had been trapped inside for thousands of years. Back aboard the Solstice, the Joint Command Team gathered urgently to discuss the terrifying discovery. "The Hollow isn't simply awakening," Chandra explained, her voice tense as she addressed both human and assembly leaders through a secure communication link. "It was deliberately imprisoned, likely by the very civilization it eventually destroyed. That containment is now failing rapidly." Vantik, still visibly shaken from their close encounter, spoke next. "If it fully breaks free, based on the size and power of the containment field we witnessed, the destruction could be catastrophic, far beyond what any of us initially believed." Marsh absorbed this information carefully, his expression thoughtful despite the mounting tension. "This changes everything. We're no longer simply preparing for a distant future threat. We're facing something that could awaken within weeks." Solve, watching remotely from the council chamber, looked visibly shaken by the news. "This information must be shared immediately with the entire assembly. We no longer have time for hesitation or political disputes." Croth, present alongside Solve, nodded gravely. "Agreed. If this threat truly awakens as quickly as suggested, no single fleet, human or assembly, will be capable of facing it alone." Even Vale, still present in the meeting, seemed visibly disturbed by the revelation, his usual composed demeanor cracking slightly. "If this is accurate, we may need every available resource from every corner of assembly space, prepared for direct confrontation." Marsh nodded slowly, feeling the weight of the moment pressing heavily upon him. "Then it's time we stop treating each other as potential threats and start treating each other as necessary allies." The room fell silent, each leader absorbing the seriousness of the path now laid clearly before them. Later that evening, Marsh stood once again on the observation deck, staring out at the vast darkness of space, now feeling heavier and more dangerous than ever before. Chandra joined him quietly, her own exhaustion evident after the day's intense discoveries. "We were so focused on convincing them to trust us," Chandra said softly, "that we almost forgot how little time we actually have." Marsh nodded slowly, his eyes distant. "Trust matters, Naomi, but so does readiness. Now we need both faster than we ever imagined." Chandra studied him carefully, sensing the heavy burden resting on his shoulders. "Do you think we're ready, Ethan? truly ready for what's coming. Marsh remained silent a long moment, staring out at the endless stars, thinking about everything humanity and the assembly had sacrificed, argued over, and slowly begun to understand about each other. "I don't know," he finally admitted quietly, "but we're going to find out very soon." Behind them, deep within unexplored space, the ancient prison holding the hollow continued tea. Oh, crack and weaken moment by moment, drawing the entire galaxy closer to a confrontation unlike anything it had ever faced before. The countdown had begun, and there was no turning back now. 3 weeks had passed since the joint investigation team discovered the failing containment field. In that time, something remarkable happened across assembly space, something few had believed possible only a month earlier. The assembly and humanity began working together in earnest. At Aurelia Prime, the great chamber that once echoed with arguments and suspicion now buzzed with a different kind of energy, urgent cooperation. Ambassador Solvay stood before the full council once more, but this time the atmosphere felt entirely different. "Reports from every monitoring station confirm it," Solvay announced, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. "The ancient containment field is failing rapidly. Based on current readings, the hollow will break free within days, not weeks." Grand Elder Croth, seated at the front of the chamber, nodded gravely. "Then we have no more time for hesitation. Full mobilization must begin immediately." Even Ambassador Vale, once humanity's harshest critic, rose to speak, his tone far more serious than before. "I have reviewed the human data extensively. Whatever doubts I once held, I no longer have the luxury of holding them. If this threat is as described, our survival depends on unity, not division." Murmurs of agreement spread through the chamber, a stark contrast to the heated arguments of weeks past. Dr. Thess stepped forward next, presenting new information gathered from continued studies of the ancient Kaelan records. "We believe the Kaelan themselves attempted to fight the Hollow directly and failed. Their final act was imprisonment, not destruction. If we hope to succeed where they could not, we must combine both human and assembly technology into something entirely new." Solvay nodded firmly. "Then let this be the moment history remembers, not as the day the assembly feared humanity, but as the day two civilizations chose to stand together." The chamber erupted into determined agreement, setting into motion the largest joint military and scientific effort ever attempted in assembly history. Aboard the Solstice, preparations moved quickly. Chandra worked alongside assembly scientists, integrating advanced containment technology with the ship's powerful energy systems. Marsh coordinated closely with Vantic, now serving as the primary assembly liaison for the joint fleet. "If Dr. Thess's theory is correct," Vantic explained during a strategy meeting aboard the Solstice, "the only way to stop the Hollow permanently is to recreate a stronger version of the Kaelan's original containment field, combining our energy technology with your ship's power output." Marsh studied the proposed plan carefully. "That would require perfect coordination between multiple ships, human and assembly alike, all firing in perfect synchronization." "Exactly," Vantic confirmed. "A single mistake could mean total failure." Boone, standing nearby, crossed his arms thoughtfully. "And if it does fail?" Chandra answered quietly. "Then we retreat, evacuate as many systems as possible, hope humanity's remaining ships can slow it down long enough for others to escape." The room fell into tense silence, everyone fully aware of the stakes resting on their success. Marsh took a deep breath, steadying himself before speaking. Then we make sure it doesn't fail. Over the following 2 days, an unprecedented alliance began forming across the galaxy. Ships from dozens of assembly worlds gathered alongside all 4 Colossus-class human warships, forming the largest combined fleet ever assembled. Soldiers, scientists, and engineers from vastly different species worked side by side, setting aside old prejudices in the face of a shared, terrifying threat. Corporal Ruiz, still aboard the Solstice, found herself working closely with a young assembly engineer named Toven, both of them adjusting critical energy conduits needed for the containment plan. "Never thought I'd be working beside a human," Toven admitted honestly, his voice carrying a mix of nervousness and curiosity. Ruiz smiled slightly despite the tension surrounding them. "Never thought I'd be working beside an alien either. Guess we're both learning something new." Toven gave a small, genuine laugh. "Guess we are." Moments like these repeated throughout the fleet, small but meaningful signs of trust, slowly replacing years of fear and misunderstanding. Finally, the day arrived. Sensors detected a massive energy surge from the ancient structure, signaling that the containment field had fully collapsed. The Hollow was awakening. Aboard the Solstice's command center, tension filled the air as Marsh stood at the heart of the Joint Fleet Coordination Hub, linked directly with assembly command ships positioned throughout the massive formatio. "Then, all ships report status," Marsh ordered firmly. One by one, confirmations came through from assembly and human vessels alike, each ready and prepared for what was about to happen. "Containment field generators fully charged," Chandra reported from her station. "Synchronization sequence ready to initiate on your command." Marsh turned to Vantik, who stood beside him, representing the Assembly's trust in this critical moment. "Commander, this is it." Vantik nodded firmly. "Together, Captain." "Together," Marsh agreed. Ahead of them, space itself seemed to twist and darken as the ancient structure finally shattered apart, releasing a massive shadowy form unlike anything they had ever witnessed. It stretched endlessly, swallowing starlight itself, radiating an aura of pure destruction. Gasps and stunned silence spread through the fleet as the Hollow fully emerged, its immense form slowly beginning to move toward the nearest inhabited systems. "All ships," Marsh announced, his voice steady despite the fear gripping every heart aboard the fleet. "Engage containment sequence now." Simultaneously, ships from across the fleet activated their newly developed energy systems, firing coordinated beams of blue and gold light directly toward the massive shadowy form. The beams merged together, forming a massive net of energy, slowly wrapping around the Hollow's enormous body. The creature let out a silent, terrifying pulse, shaking the very fabric of space around it, causing several smaller ships to shudder violently under the pressure. "Containment field forming," Chandra reported urgently, sweat forming on her brow despite the ship's controlled temperature. "But it's fighting back, power levels dropping faster than predicted." "Divert additional power from non-essential systems," Marsh ordered immediately. "Everything we have right now." Throughout the fleet, ships strained under immense pressure, pouring every available resource into maintaining the fragile containment field. Slowly, painfully, the massive shadowy form began to shrink, its terrifying form compressing under the combined might of humanity and the Assembly. "It's working," Vantik shouted, relief evident in his voice. But suddenly, the Hollow let out one final desperate surge of energy, breaking through several sections of the containment net entirely. Alarms blared throughout the fleet as multiple ships lost power instantly, drifting helplessly in space. "We're losing containment," Chandra shouted urgently. Marsh's mind raced, desperately searching for a solution. Then an idea struck him, dangerous but necessary. "Solstice, prepare to divert our main reactor core directly into the containment field," Marsh ordered firmly. Boone's eyes widened in alarm. "Captain, that could overload our entire ship." "I'm aware," Marsh replied calmly, though his heart pounded fiercely beneath his composed exterior. "But it's our only chance to fully contain this thing before it reaches inhabited space." Chandra hesitated only briefly before nodding firmly. "Rerouting reactor core now, Captain." The ship trembled violently as immense power surged directly into the containment field, causing the entire formation of energy beams to intensify dramatically. Slowly, the Hollow's massive form began compressing rapidly, its terrifying presence weakening under the overwhelming force. "Containment field stabilizing," Chandra announced, hope returning to her voice. "It's working, Captain." With one final surge of combined power, the massive shadowy form finally collapsed entirely, sealed tightly within a newly formed crystalline structure, similar to the ancient prison that had once contained it for thousands of years. Silence swept across the fleet as the crew slowly realized what had just happened. The immediate threat was over. Cheers and relieved celebrations erupted throughout the fleet communication channels, as both human and assembly crews realized their combined effort had succeeded. Aboard the Solstice, exhausted but relieved smiles spread across every face in the command center. Marsh allowed himself a brief moment of relief, letting out a slow, steady breath. "Status report. All critical systems stabilizing," Chandra reported, relief clear in her voice. "We lost several ships temporarily to power failures, but no casualties reported across the fleet." Vantik placed a hand gently on Marsh's shoulder, an unusual gesture of gratitude and respect between species. "You did it, Captain." "We did it together," Marsh said, feeling the immense weight finally beginning to lift from his shoulders. "This wasn't a victory for humanity or the Assembly alone, Commander. This was proof of what's possible when we choose unity over fear." Days later, aboard the Council chamber at Aurelia Prime, representatives from across the galaxy gathered once more, this time not in fear or suspicion, but in celebration and gratitude. Ambassador Solvay stood proudly at the center platform, addressing the assembled council. "Today, we stand as witnesses to history," Solvay announced warmly. "A threat believed capable of ending civilizations was successfully contained, not through the strength of one species alone, but through the combined courage, sacrifice, and unity of many." Applause echoed through the chamber, a sound rarely heard during such formal gatherings. Grand Elder Croth stepped forward, his usual stern expression now softened by genuine respect. "Captain Marsh, on behalf of the entire Starward Assembly, we formally welcome humanity as trusted allies, no longer viewed with suspicion, but honored as equals among the stars." Marsh, standing humbly among the gathered representatives, bowed his head respectfully. "Thank you, Elder Croth. Humanity is honored to stand beside the Assembly, not as strangers, but as friends, prepared to face whatever challenges the galaxy presents next." Ambassador Vale, once humanity's fiercest critic, stepped forward as well, extending a respectful nod toward Marsh. Captain, I admit my doubts were strong, but actions, as you've shown clearly, speak louder than words or fear ever could. Marsh accepted his words graciously. Doubt is natural, Ambassador. What matters most is how we choose to move forward from it. Later that evening, Marsh stood once again on the solstice's observation deck, staring out at the peaceful stars above. Chandra joined him quietly, her expression calm and content for the first time in what felt like years. "We did it," she said softly, still finding it hard to fully believe. Marsh nodded slowly, a small, genuine smile forming on his face. "We did it together." Chandra studied him carefully. "What happens now, Ethan, now that the immediate threat is over?" Marsh considered the question thoughtfully. "Now we continue building trust, not just because the threat is gone, but because unity, once discovered, shouldn't be forgotten." Chandra smiled warmly. "The Assembly seems eager to learn more about Earth. Perhaps this is only the beginning of something much greater." Marsh looked out at the stars, his mind drifting toward the future, filled with uncertainty but also newfound hope. Perhaps it is. As they stood together, watching the peaceful stars stretch endlessly before them, neither could yet know exactly what challenges or adventures awaited humanity and the Assembly in the days ahead. But for the first time in years, Marsh felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. Hope. Somewhere far away, deep within uncharted space, other mysteries and dangers surely waited, patient and silent, much like the Hollow once had. But now humanity no longer stood alone, facing an uncertain universe in isolation and secrecy. Now they stood together with allies, ready to face whatever the galaxy revealed next. And as the solstice drifted quietly among the stars, Captain Ethan Marsh allowed himself, just for a moment, to feel proud of everything humanity had accomplished. Because sometimes the greatest victories weren't won through power or fear. They were won through trust, unity, and the simple courage to stand together against the darkness.